Hi, Scott Orlin with CINEMA-Magazin. There is a terrific new TV series coming your way. It is called The Hardy Boys. And if that sounds familiar, well, you may have read the more than 190 volumes of the story that have kind of been out into the ether since 1927. And the new series has been developed and directed by Jason Stone. And the Hardy Boys themselves are Alexander Elliot and Rohan Campbell. Jason, I'm going to start with you. I mean, obviously I mentioned 1927, but the stories have evolved over these almost 90 years. But at the core, we still have these two teenagers who are sleuths.
That's it. Those are, I mean, that's our heroes. It's called the Hardy Boys for a reason. They're the center of it all. And this season, the first season of our show, is sort of the origin story of how they became the Hardy Boys that everybody knows from the books. So even though it's a reinterpretation of some of the stories, it's definitely an origin story for where they got their skills and what brought them into the mystery, at least the way we decided to interpret it.
Now, you talk about the mystery. With some of the series that have predicated this before, they've kind of, every episode has been its own unique story. But you're taking one story, kind of evolving it over the entire season. Talk about that structure, because there are still a lot of mysteries that kind of intertwine with the main thrust of the story.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the previous iterations of the television iterations were like a mystery of the week, episodic structure. And we were really excited to do something that was more sweeping, had a serialized arc of one major mystery, which is the boys' search for the truth behind what happened to their mom. And, you know, like any good long mystery, there's a bunch of smaller clues and twists and turns along the way. So the hope is that each episode explores a breadcrumb on the journey to figure out the final answer of what really happened. And so the fun of it is going on that long journey, but ultimately with a much bigger payoff for a bigger mystery.
I've always thought that what makes acting work is truth. And for you two guys, that very opening scene of you guys with in front of the TV playing the game, having two brothers, myself, and the sibling rivalry that goes on, I thought, wow, you've nailed it. That animosity but love that kind of dangles between the two. Talk a little bit about how you forged your relationship, because the story is going to center on believing the two of you are brothers going on this journey.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was pretty natural off the start. Like, I met Alex and I fell in love with him like right away. I thought he was perfect for it. And then with that opening scene, it was funny. That was like the three of us. I think we spent a day or so rehearsing just the opening scene over and over again, and getting used to the way these brothers would talk to each other and their differences and their alikeness and stuff like that. And we got to a sloppy little point that felt like real brothers, you know, a day in the life, because things changed so much throughout the show. It was really important that we met them, you know, as their normal selves. And I think we did that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that first scene is really what kind of sets the foundation for these brothers and their connection. And the way we worked on it, we had a lot of kind of improv going on. Jason came up to Rowan and I and asked us to come up with a bunch of 80s insults like "pork bag" and "butthead" and all these things. And then we just ran the scene and we just like added stuff in, improv little parts until it felt really, really nice and natural.
Mm-hmm. And then barf bag was that's where we landed, right? Barf bag?
Yeah, barf bag and butthead, I think is what we ended up with. And then in terms of the relationship, like Rowan said, we kind of just like hit it off right off the bat. And then as the season went on, it just got stronger and stronger. And I feel like it's the same with Frank and Joe as the season goes on. The bond just gets stronger and stronger, and they realize how much they need each other by the end of the season.
And sadly, for whatever the reason it is, adults seem to want to look down on kids that they're not as perceptive, they're not as smart, they haven't experienced enough of life. And the beauty of a show like this is that sometimes you can undervalue people, and that just because somebody's a teenager doesn't mean that they don't have all the skill sets needed to do. So talk a little bit about how important a show like this is in empowering kids to have a voice or to find their station.
Rowan, you want to take it?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's incredibly important. I think, like you said, something that I loved hearing you say out loud is this show is a lot about empowering people and their abilities that people might not think they have. And even the relationship between Frank and Joe throughout the series, it comes to a point where Frank starts to realize Joe is really the one thing he needs to figure this whole thing out. So I think it's incredibly important empowering young people to sort of have a voice and be a part of something. I mean, still listen to your parents, because that's a big, thing in the show. Still listen to your parents and take advice. But yeah, I think it's important. I think, especially with this generation, to sort of, take care of each other and build each other up and believe in yourself. I think it's huge.
And Jason, sadly, audiences have become, I don't want to say necessarily sophisticated, but we're always second guessing. Where maybe 30 years ago, there was a naivete in our viewing habits, and now we're always suspicious of everything. So how complicated is it to make a true mystery where we don't know what's coming?
You'd have to ask the audience. I mean, I feel like I hope we've hidden it enough to make it feel like it was a journey to get there and that they didn't see it all coming. But the part of the fun is the guessing game, right? Is sitting around with your family watching on a Friday night and or binging it all in one weekend and trying to get ahead of each other. And I totally agree with you, Scott. Like, I have a young niece who's like 8 years old, and we'll be watching a movie or a TV show, and she's ahead of it. And I'm floored. I don't know if it's just the amount of material and content and stories that young people see now compared to when we were younger. They're just so much more adept at picking up the rhythms of story. So, it is definitely a challenge to try and construct something that you don't see coming. The phrase that I always love with mysteries, and actually anything, when you get to an ending, you want it to be inevitable but unexpected. And so it feels like you've gone through this journey and you get to a point that you feel satisfied to be at, but you never saw coming in that way. So, maybe people will get ahead of certain things in the story. Hopefully, they don't get so far ahead where it doesn't feel like there's any point watching. But I think regardless of if the plot becomes whether they get ahead of the plot, I feel like the journey and the characters and the fun of like the relationships and watching these people do these things will hopefully be enough to keep them engaged and want to keep watching.
And part of that engagement is going to be on the shoulders of you two guys, in the sense of picking up clues. That, in other words, slowly but surely, you kind of have to build this puzzle. And I'm wondering, for each of you, how perceptive are you with clues? I mean, how good are you like your characters, or?
The funny thing is, I feel like Rohan and I are actually kind of switched. Like, Joe is like super spunky and like crazy and fun, and I feel like Rohan like embodies that perfectly. And then Frank is all like super like analytical, whereas like I feel like I would be the one to like notice something, So it was actually fun to like play it the other way around. That was cool.
Yeah, I'm kind of like, I kind of have this like aloofness in life where I try to get through things as impulsively as possible, which is definitely Joe. So there's a part of me that just feels like I'm playing a version of my older brother, to be completely honest. And that was interesting for me, and trying to put on that hat and think before I act. But Alex, you're right. It did feel like a switch.
And part of the journey of this show too is going to be placing you in different positions or different circumstances. What has been the coolest moment for you? Has there been a scenario, and we don't want to give too much away, but where you were asked to do something, whether it was an action sequence or something that took you out of the ordinary, that was like, wow, this is pretty cool?
Well, I feel like with Joe's whole character in general, there was just a lot of cool stuff, because Joe's always the one to get in trouble. Joe's always running away from the bad guys. Joe's always putting his life in danger, So I feel like just doing everything with Joe and putting himself in these crazy situations it made me feel like Tom Cruise on set, even though it wasn't even close to what he can do. It was really, really awesome to be able to do something like that, even just get a taste of, these action sequences.
Right. I spent a lot of this season sort of talking to people. Frank's the one talking to people. It's a dialogue-heavy role, but the finale and the carnival stuff are like, I remember I rolled up to the carnival and I was like, how are we this lucky? Like, this is such a cool set. Super 80s as well. It was like we found the one carnival in town that was still back in the day, and that was really cool. And then the finale was like full-on harness, flying through the air kind of thing, not to give anything away, but it was a lot of fun.
Why the 80s, Jason?
there's a technical reason and then there's a story reason. I'll go for the story first because that's more interesting. You know, the main thing is that, you know, I feel like mystery solving is so much more computer based now. Like, who wants to watch a show about two kids sitting on Google for a half an hour or 45 minutes, right? So, you know, I think part of the charm of going back to the 80s is you rewind the clock on the technological crutches that we have in order to do all of our sleuthing and information finding. So instead of having to just go, you know, and look it up, you have to go and find it with your, you know, bare hands, dig it up out of the ground, or go talk to people, or go to a library, which is an antiquated building where books are kept. You know, that's something that feels a little out of date in some ways, but also still very much relevant, because I think everybody is still everybody would respond to people who take action and get out there and go do it for themselves. And it's just more exciting to shoot scenes that way. So visually and story-wise, it just helps to force characters to do things in action instead of just parked in front of a computer. Also, the cell phone side of things allows you to get attention in a way that you wouldn't normally get, right? Because, you know, if you know somebody's coming to do something bad, if Frank knows somebody's coming to do something bad to Joe, all he can do is, you know, text him or give him a call. You know, but if you can't do that, then it's a rush to the finish line. Is he going to get there in time to save him? So, you know, it helps with the drama, it helps with the tension, it helps with the story, the mystery solving. So, the 80s really lent itself to that. And
you have a great soundtrack, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Just to put me there. And the last question for you, as you know, this show hopefully is like the books. It's going to play around the world, you know, in different countries. And most of the countries, sadly, are not going to use your voice. You're going to be dubbed. And I'm wondering, I don't know if you've heard that yet, but what are you expecting when all of a sudden there's going to be German coming out of your mouth, there's going to be Italian, there's going to be Russian, Japanese?
I recently heard myself in Portuguese on a Netflix special, and I actually fell over. It was the funniest thing. They made my voice like 9 octaves deeper. It was just the funniest.
No, I just feel like it would be hilarious just to see like my mouth moving, because I know how I sound, and then just have something else. No, I would just be laughing the whole time.
It's also so cool to hear that people are going to be, you know, watching that all over the world. It's crazy.
For season 2, you have to learn all the languages in the places we're going to be showing, so that we don't have to do it.
Right.
It'll be 27 takes per scene.
27 takes, and only one take per language.
Jason, will each season be one mystery?
Did you say will the next season?
Will each season kind of be one mystery unfolding?
Well, hopefully, fingers crossed, we do have a second season. But yeah, the idea is that we do want to keep it as a serialized one big mystery per season. But season 2, we've started to unpack a little bit and started writing, and we want a bit more of a faster churn so that there's more smaller mysteries along the way that keeps us going and throws us into the next episode. We did that a little bit season 1. I think we can do more of that season 2. So yes and yes.
Well, Alex, Rohan, Jason, congratulations again. I'm really enjoying the show, and I think audiences are going to do it as well. It's Hardy Boys, and this is Scott Orlin. Until next time.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Yeah.